Well, if Michael had been with me outside the grim prison walls at Belmarsh on Sunday, he wouldn't be so sanguine about this question of whether or not journalism is being criminalized. Because in the case of Julian Assange, it very clearly has. This is a multiple award-winning journalist and publisher, a man whose work used to be plastered on the front pages of some of the world's most prominent newspapers, virtually every one of which has now micturated upon him in his travails. These publications were happy to run with Julian Assange's journalism because it was, as John White has just said, revelation of information of criminal activity by powerful states. And if that's not the role of journalism, I'm hard pushed to come up with a definition of what journalism is. It is the right of the public to know if their governments are committing crimes. Sometimes you can only reveal those crimes by a criminal action itself. I give you a very good example in the building behind me. The Daily Telegraph, one of the big newspapers in the British state, published stolen computer disks of the information about members of Parliament on a mass scale, hundreds of members of Parliament fiddling their expenses, stealing from the taxpayer, and they published it in the public interest. And they were right to do so and commended for doing so. But the original act of the theft of those disks was in itself a crime. But sometimes, like Chelsea Manning, a crime has to be committed to reveal a bigger crime in the public interest. Now, I don't believe that Ellsberg would have been cleared in the courts of the United States in 2019, not least because the Supreme Court of the United States has been stuffed full of Bush, Republican, Trump nominees who are stooges for the prevailing orthodoxy, much the same way that members of the courts across the world have been. It's always been a conservative institution, the judiciary, but in the past it did have an appreciation that the Fourth Estate had a valuable role to play. Okay. Nowadays, I'm afraid the Fourth Estate has become a sink estate.